Yeah,
Yeah, it worked this time. Coalition Purple back on the air, having a few technical difficulties to start off the new year of 2025.
yeah,
It's been a rocky 2025 already. That's all I can say.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say we were talking just as we were getting ready to get started here about the like you were saying the elephant in the room, which is the fires. And so I was just going to give a quick update on the sort of the people I know up there and sort of what's going on. So basically, I know people like on either end of the fire, but not in the middle of it. So I know people who are north of it, and I know people who are south of it, but I don't know too many people that are sort of in the midst of it in that
Right.
Palisades area. But what I would say is that when I went to high school, a lot of the people that I went to high school with were from the Palisades, and Palisades High School was in there, which is now gone, I guess.
Yep.
And it's just kind of one of these things where it's like, so I have sort of like tangential connections to a lot of people who lived in that area, and hopefully maybe someday still will. But it's just like this whole big picture of sort of a systemic failure that is going on right now with the fighting of the fire. But in the midst of this, and this is weird because I've been through so many fires in California, and I feel like I just have a different feeling about this fire than we had about some of the other ones, because everybody always talked about being prepared for fires when I was growing up because there were always fires. So
Right.
everybody knows that the fires are there and the fires are coming. And so even while we send our best wishes and prayers and, keeping our fingers crossed for anyone in that area, and, hopefully not too many people will die from this whole situation, it's like I cannot help but look at this particular one in both what should have happened before the catastrophe that's happening currently and the catastrophe that's looming on the horizon that's gonna happen. And I think that's one of those things that I'm also going to spend a little time talking about today, because as far as like the front end of it is, preparation was not correct.
Right.
Upgrading the infrastructure, we have not done that properly. We have not maintained our forestry and our hill environments properly. The fact that the fire was able to get down into these residential areas, burning as hot and as fast as it did, obviously the winds are, a component of that.
Yeah.
But so is the failure to maintain appropriate perimeters around properties to help residents. If let's say we had a mayor in Los Angeles, because I'm still a voter in Los Angeles.
Right.
I did not vote for Karen Bass. Let me throw that one out there right away. What Karen Bass could have done is increased funding to the fire departments to have something, for community engagement and to do more proactive maintenance of areas around town so that the brush wasn't in such close proximity to residential areas. But instead, what she did was, in her infinite wisdom, is cut funding for the fire department. And then I guess her thinking, if I could get into her head, is that because she increased funding for homelessness, now that all the people in the area are homeless, she actually did the right thing. Other than that, I'm not sure exactly what she was thinking about.
Yeah. Well, I don't follow LA politics that closely, so you would have a much better handle on it than me. My only thought on that is, my guess is this has been a systemic problem for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, she may have made it a little worse, but at the same time, it's like the whole safe space thing's been going on forever. I mean, years ago, we owned a little place up on Palomar Mountain, and then we owned some property outside of Julian. And I mean, God, the money we would spend on just trying to keep the safe space.
Yeah.
And I mean, those are obviously not even that populated areas. I mean, it was a challenge. I mean, when you're in areas like that, yeah, my son was actually staying with a friend who had just had some surgery up, not really close to the fires, but in the Glendale area. So kind of getting up that way a little bit. And so they're just surrounded, where this one particular location is just surrounded by brush and huge trees. And I was like, do you really want to stay there? I mean, these embers, they can fly a long way. And so it's one of those things where it's such a complicated problem in so many ways, because we've basically have grown these urban areas in the middle of forests.
Right. But the thing is, the city of Los Angeles and the county of Los Angeles, because the LA County Board of Supervisors is going to bear a lot of blame for this as well. The role of government is to provide sort of like a template for how everything is supposed to work and how it can work safely.
Right.
So part of that template is the infrastructure within the cities, like water and hydrants. And, in the case of this particular one, again, traffic flow. All the cars that were stuck, people that couldn't get out. Well, I mean, so we're giving no consideration to that either, apparently.
Yeah.
We don't improve water infrastructure, yet our population goes up and up and up. And so these kind of things are what the city governments are supposed to be doing. Right. They take in billions of dollars. Yeah. And for what? What are they doing exactly? So all these people that have lost their houses and their livelihoods, and the schools that are gone, and the untold human tragedy of the whole thing. What are we doing? What are people doing? And so again, if you could have the Forestry Service, the LA County, the firefighting and forestry and all that stuff come together and just be making a consistent effort at making sure that the areas around these communities in the hills and in spaces that are very, very difficult for an individual homeowner to contend with. I mean, these are the taxpayers. Right. All this taxpayer money that they're paying into these cities is supposed to go to ensuring that their life within the city is protected. And now their homes are gone. Some people are dead. And it's like, okay, well, what is this tax base spending this money into this city to do if the city can't even maintain a proper fire break?
Right. Well, again, that's why I think it's such a complicated problem, because, I mean, I guess the reverse argument of that is maybe the best thing for those cities to do is to really clamp down on allowing development to happen to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. Which, you could argue for that. I think a lot of people would argue against that. It's like, hey, we should be able to build or whatever. But I mean, part of it is something that we've kind of painted ourselves into a corner.
But here's the thing, and I have to push it back against that, because what is the constant drumbeat we get from our politicians?
We need more homes.
Housing. We need more housing.
That's it. I agree.
And the thing is, if the city is going to come out and say we got to build, we got to have more housing. If they're going to say that, then they have to take responsibility for making sure that the way and in the area that the housing is being built is safe, and they aren't.
Right.
And that's what I say. It's just, I mean, again, I try not, when we do this show, I'm usually not like quite so ranting, but it's like, it's maddening.
This is a huge deal for California. I mean, I keep thinking back to every time they have the big floods and hurricanes and stuff like that in the Midwest or in Florida or whatever. I keep thinking, why are they allowing this to go on? They know they're going to get flooded out, right?
Yeah.
You can just bank on it. And same way with the hurricanes. You can just bank on some part of Florida is going to get wiped out. Yeah. And now that's really where California's at. I mean, and it's you can bank on some parts of California are just going to get burned to the ground.
But here's the next thing.
It's a much bigger problem than earthquakes.
Oh, yeah, by
Not
far.
Even close.
But here's the other thing, and because of where this fire is, it makes this very acute. So, and I can speak to this personally. One of the things that's been happening in California is the insurance companies have been pulling out, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before. Yep. So people are all over the place are losing their fire insurance. Now, the thing is, you can't have an uninsured home, basically anywhere, because if you have a mortgage, the mortgage, says you have to have insurance and blah, blah. So, So to correct the fact that the insurance companies are pulling out of California left and right, they've created something called the Fair Plan of California, which I am now unfortunately part of. And So what that
Yep.
means is that all the people in these areas that got burned out, and
Yep.
it's very high probability that most of them don't have private insurance anymore, and they
Nope.
are part of the California Fair Plan. And here's the kicker: the houses that are getting burnt down right now in the Palisades, that is the most expensive real estate in the entire world.
Yep.
The houses that are being burnt down are, in some cases, 20 million a pop. Every one of those homeowners is now going to be coming to the state to say, make me whole.
Yep.
Where is the state going to get $10 billion
Right.
to rebuild the property that, is now lost in these fires? And the reason that I'm bringing it up on this particular show, too, is that the out of control costs in California that have been going on for years, the out of control housing market that has been going on for years, the inflation, the taxes, the destruction of the infrastructure, all of that stuff that adds to cost. That is
Yep.
why the insurance companies are pulling out. And now that we don't have private insurance, this cost is going to hit the California government like a bomb.
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
all been going on for years, and we do nothing about it.
well, and to the extent that any of these people have insurance, I was actually talking to a friend of mine who's an insurance broker and does a lot of commercial real insurance and all that kind of stuff. He says, I can guarantee you most of those people up there are so inadequately covered that they're
Oh, no.
going to have no choice but to plead for mercy somewhere, federal, state, somewhere. He says, I know what people get insurance for up there, and it's not even going to come close.
Yeah.
It's
And the
not
other
even
thing
going to
is
come close.
that people, even though the real estate there is so valuable and the houses are of such great value, as I was saying earlier, that I went to high school with so many people who lived in
Yeah.
that area and grew up in that area. There are people that have family homes in that area that have been there for 50,
Oh
60
yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And they're not the wealthy celebrities that you see having Diddy parties up in the Hollywood Hills or whatever.
Right.
They've been there for a very long time, and they've sunk their entire lives into these houses. And as time has gone on and the real estate has gotten more and more expensive, they couldn't afford to buy a house there anymore, but they live there because that's where they've
Yeah.
always lived. And so
Absolutely.
now you've got people that have lost everything and are in such an inflationary position where they're not going to be able to rebuild.
No.
I mean, God only knows what's going to happen to all the houses and all the families in that area. They're just going to be gone, and it's
Oh, I know.
it's going to never come back. I mean, this is a tragedy that's been compounded and compounded and compounded. We've been building to this tragedy for 30 years in
Oh
California,
yeah.
and man, this is going to be. I mean, in the long run, as things even quiet down, I mean, obviously, in the moment, it's a horrible situation. But as things go down the road, this is going to be one of the worst nightmares that anyone has ever seen in the United States. This is going to be an absolute catastrophe.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And it's not going away. It's like, the Santa Anas are nothing new.
Right.
They're probably going to get a little worse as time goes on.
Mhm.
And so it's, we're lucky here in San Diego. It's only a matter of time where we don't get hit quite as hard with some of the Santa Anas, depending on where you are in San Diego,
Yeah.
compared to some of those areas up there. But at the same time, we can get them, and we've had our share of fires. And I do my share as you do. I know driving around and hiking around and things like that. And I look out over some of these places I've hiked at recently
Oh, yeah.
that are just, there's houses out in the middle of places that it's like, there's no freaking way they're going to be able to get up that cliff to help that homeowner, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, and again, that's where we keep getting in this betwixt and between situation, to your point. We keep yelling about we need more housing, and we do more and more housing. But at the same time, we're putting we're building in areas that are just prone to this, and and it's a difficult equation because people should be able to live wherever they want to live. I kind of get that, but at the same time, if it becomes a societal burden because of where they're living, how do you balance all that out?
But part of it too, though, is and I just have to hit this part of it too because of the whole bad planning aspect of it. So during the course of this fire, apparently, the firefighters were not able to get water from the hydrants
Right.
because the hydrants ran out of water.
Yeah.
Now, I looked up sort of how the hydrants in that area work, and it's pretty much the same way everywhere. You have a certain water reserve, you have a water tower somewhere up on
Yep.
top of a mountain, and
Yep.
then the hydrants are gravity fed from water flowing down from those containers. Now, I haven't been able to figure out exactly when the last time they built a new one, but I would be willing to bet they haven't built a new water container up there to deal with the increasing population and the increasing congestion.
Yeah.
50
Decade.
years, probably.
Yeah.
I mean, God
Yeah.
only knows. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't say that for sure, but my understanding is that they had 3 tanks that contained 1 million gallons of water each. Now, it sounds like a huge amount of water, and in a sense, it is in some senses. But as far as fighting a fire goes,
Like this.
woefully inadequate. And that's
Yeah.
the thing. I can say for a fact that it's woefully inadequate because I'm watching people's houses burn down.
Right.
And so the idea that you can't even build another damn water tower and connect it into the system so that you could have 8 million gallons of water, 10 million gallons of water, you're constantly expanding the population. You're constantly getting people closer and closer to each other. You
Yeah.
know that you have faulty infrastructure. You're not doing anything to prevent the fires, but you can't even be bothered to build an extra water tower once in a while. And I've been complaining about this for years
Yeah.
because my mother lives out in Malibu.
Right.
I've watched the population increase in Malibu year after year after year after year, but I never see new fire stations. I never see new water infrastructure. I never see new fire hydrants. Never. So we
Right.
keep packing people in more and more. And as you say, putting them in areas that puts them in danger as far as fires. And then the state does nothing.
Right.
And then you hear things like billions of dollars for high-speed rail, billions of dollars lost on homelessness that we don't have any idea what even became of it. And now you're starting to hear things like $1 million programs for DEI hiring within the fire department. And it's like all of this money that could be put to, as I say, doing something simple as building a water tower.
Right.
It's all gone. And we don't
Right.
even know what happened to all of it. And it's
Right.
like people are dying. The property destruction is just absolutely mind-boggling. We've destroyed the insurance market in California. All the things that could be helping people right now, we have destroyed.
Yeah.
For no good reason.
Yeah. Well, and again, I mean, eventually we can bring this back around to the whole third party thing, because this is where we just need to get back to some common sense discussions, and this really has come home to me so much in the last couple of days for a couple of reasons. One, I was kind of listening to some of the stuff they were talking about with Jimmy Carter and all the things that he actually did as president and stuff,
Yeah.
whether you agree or disagree with him on politics and all that. But the whole point of what I took away from that is so many people were saying that he kind of talked to both sides. He lived in the deep South, and he learned how to work with, in essence, white supremacists as well as the Black community. And that kind of a politician couldn't exist today.
Yeah.
It just couldn't exist today. You're either on one side or the other side. So that kind of struck me. And then I was listening to an author who's writing this book about how boys are kind of becoming disadvantaged now. And we've had this discussion, right? That they develop differently, slower. And again, people are trying to say, well, if you say that you want to support trying to help boys develop and evolve, that has to be, in opposition to all the things that women need to, equal pay and all that kind of stuff. And his point is, no, you need to do both, but you can't put one against the other. And that's where we've gotten so much. And I think it's so true, particularly in California or any solidly blue state or any solidly red state. You have the same situation, just a different flavor of it.
Yeah.
Is that we just have to stop putting people and labeling people in these buckets. It's like the DEI stuff. There's been so many, I think, Black leaders in particular who have come out actually and said, the intention was good, but the way we're trying to force this is all wrong. You
Yeah.
know, and it's like we need to incent companies to do the right thing. But if you're trying to force this kind of stuff and create these crazy programs and all that, it's not going to work because people are just sugarcoating it so they can get the money. It becomes a money grab,
Yeah.
you know,
And
and
the thing is,
that's where the third party hopefully could start creating a wedge where, hey, we got to come back to just, hey, let's just solve the basic infrastructure problems first. Let's try and figure out, can we get away from figuring out the whole insurance thing? I mean, so much of what happens in insurance becomes insurance reform more so than what it should be is infrastructure, infrastructure investments, and all these other things that drive it. And but we just don't have that ability to have that conversation.
yeah. Well, as I say, there's so many things that need to change. I really, I mean, first of all, I hope they recall Karen Bass. I mean, I'm signing that petition the day it shows up on my door. And I also hope that whoever they bring in to replace it starts right off on day one saying, we need to fix the fundamental issues on a baseline level in Los Angeles and in California overall. And then we can go on to start trying to figure out some of these more hyper complex issues.
Right.
And, as far as like hiring and things like that within the fire department, hire the best people possible, the most qualified people for the job. Discrimination is illegal. It is illegal in the United States to discriminate on race, gender, or anything else. If people are doing that, if people are being discriminated against, charges should be brought and people should be punished for discrimination. But beyond that, just get people into the job that want the job to do the job, not as some sort of political position to sort of promote something else. The person who should be the commissioner and should be running the Los Angeles County Fire Department should be a person who wants that job specifically to improve fire safety. If they are concentrating or focused on anything else, if they try to get that job for any other reason, trying to expand inclusion or anything else, then they shouldn't have that job.
Right.
The person with that job should be the person who wants to help protect us against fires. Let them do the other stuff in something else where people's lives aren't going to be lost.
Right. Yeah. No, I know. Well, yeah, I mean, kind of going back to one of your first comments, I mean, I guess I would hope this just wakes everybody up because I do think this fire is a lot different than ones that we've had.
It really
in the
feels
past.
different.
And hopefully it's the siren call that we really need. It's like we almost need to like call a timeout and let's get real about what the priorities need to be, whether that's at the city level, county level, state level, because right now it's just also willy-nilly. And it's really, and we've talked about this a million times, it's really built around all the wrong incentives. People are being incented to come up with a lot of crazy stuff because they can reap some money from it, right? You know?
Yeah.
And it's like, man, everything's just got to kind of stop. And okay, what's really important? Where do we really need to invest? I think everybody would agree we have to invest in infrastructure. And we do need to invest in preventing homelessness, not in the way we've been doing it, because that's not working. But we just have to have a much clearer eye on that. And I think the place to start is we got to get some different kinds of thinking going. And that's where a third party can play a big role.
Yeah. Well, as I say, in California, though, unfortunately, it's not even really a third party. It would be a second one. We just need some interjection of some kind of common sense or people who are just desirous of focusing on something else. Yeah. I mean, I've been going back and listening to some things, and there was Proposition 1 in California, I believe it was, that was supposed to fund a whole bunch of water storage and infrastructure things. No, nothing has been done. Nothing.
Right.
Not one new water. I can't remember how many billions of dollars Proposition 1 approved to build water storage. To have absolutely nothing done about that at all. Not one.
I'm sure they paid for a lot of studies. That's usually what happens, right? So no, I know. I mean, it is a huge, and again, I I think you're right. I mean, if there's any good that comes out of this, and I don't know if there will be, is that it does hopefully get people refocused on some just bottom line fundamental stuff that needs
Yeah.
to get fixed, and stop trying to put people in different camps of, well, if you're for this, you're against that. It's not about that anymore. It's about, hey, what do we have to do to keep people safe?
Yeah. Because it's really about, I think part of the problem that we've had over the years is that, there is sort of a concept of like the fundamental role of government, and people disagree on it and what government should
Right,
do, what it shouldn't do. But we've gone so far afield. The government tries to do so many things that it's just terrible at and wastes so much money doing them that it's completely ignoring the sort of very basic baseline functions of government. And I feel that, it's funny. I've talked sort of about this like in education too. It's
right,
like if you can't teach sort of math, reading, English, that super duper baseline thing, you shouldn't be worrying about teaching anything else. You shouldn't have new classes or new programs. Get that taught. If you can show us that you can teach that, okay, then, more other elective type things, sure, perfect. But when you have half of your school population, they can't read and write at grade level,
right,
well, then what are you even doing? I
right,
mean, sure, maybe you've got some fancy indoctrination program in there, or I don't know, maybe you've got some kind of arts program that's pretty nice and things like that. And sure, and that I'm for those things generally. But when you're not teaching half of your students to read and write,
right,
then you have no value. And then you look at the price tag to not teach people, billions and billions of dollars we spend on education so that we can produce people that can't read and write. What are we
right.
doing? I mean, it's
Yeah,
crazy. And it's the same way with every other level of government. I mean, that's sort of a glaring one because we all, it gets a lot of attention. But it's like if you can't protect people, police and fire, what else are you even doing?
right. Well, and that's basically what the main role of government is to provide protection on a variety of levels, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, each one of them is so fairly complicated, but at the end of the day, it's also very simple that when you look at how things are being incented, that you just follow the money,
Yeah.
and and it kind of comes back to some like the things you've talked about on public unions for public employees, right? So it's like it's not that we're not spending a lot of money;
Right.
it's just how it's being spent and how the influence is there to spend on certain things. And it's mainly to enrich various people. And that's not, I'm, I'm a, I'm all for paying particularly teachers really decent salaries. I mean, I
Yeah.
think it's one of the most important things government can do, but it can't be at the loss of everything in terms of actual performance.
Yeah.
If kids are still not up to level, okay, it's no longer a money issue. It's how are we measuring this?
Well, the other thing too is that sort of taking sort of a super simplistic view of what government should be. Basically, there are things that I think we agree as a community that we need. In this particular case, fire prevention,
Good
and
start.
there's and it's like a subset of those things falls into things that the community really can't do on its own. I mean, it's possible in some senses to have a community fire department, but it would be very, very difficult to
Oh yeah,
run, fund, and operate. It would be incredibly difficult. Not to mention the fact that the fire department is sort of an intrusive thing in certain senses. I mean, the fire department has the right to knock your car into a ditch if it's in the way, or break
right.
a wall in your house. So I mean, if as soon as each individual community is empowering people to go,
Yeah,
run cars into ditches, well, you get all kinds of problems.
right,
So it's like there needs to be a fire department, and it's not something that can be easily run by people just in general. So that falls right into the rubric of this is something that government has to do. There has to be a government funded fire force. And if things don't fit into that particular category where it's something the community needs and it really can't be done in any other way, then those should be the absolute top priorities of government, and every single other thing should fall to the wayside. And one of those things too, I think, is potentially education. There are a lot of good private schools. In fact, most of the best schools in the Los Angeles area, according to most people, are the charter schools. And those are, a public-private cooperation. So the government is going to spend a lot of money on education, but we should be thinking about things like, okay, we need to have the money following the children, and then a lot of the work and effort done on education can be done by private parties, because private parties are perfectly capable of doing that type of thing. And the money that we save, by foisting some responsibility onto the community, we can put into things like fire prevention, which the community can't easily do on its own. Right. And then we can have it's not a matter of we need $10 more in the fire department. We need a massive upgrade in what the fire department is capable of doing and what it is doing. And so we need to improve the practical abilities of things that the government can only do. And we need to just stop with this nonsense about doing things that the government doesn't need to be involved in at all, including building a bullet train. If Merced and San Bernardino want to have a bullet train that goes out to,
nowhere,
I don't know, somewhere, Fresno, well, then let them do that. Fine, build a train that goes to Fresno. But the government shouldn't be spending it's something like $80 billion.
It just keeps changing. It just keeps be more and more and doing less and less. It's outrageous. Yeah.
It's outrageous. And now you see the catastrophes that are going on within the state with no response. I mean, Newsom and Bass have been basically mute.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. Well, hopefully it's a wake-up call and getting people to start refocusing on what the priorities should be. Because it's clear the priorities aren't there, and it's only gonna continue. So that, like I said, hopefully that's one positive that can come out of this disaster is maybe people will wake up and start talking with each other.
That's really got to have to happen,
because that's where it's got to start. It's got to, and stop the whole pointing fingers thing. But at the same time, as far as, well, if we do this, we can't do that. It's like, okay, number one, let's just figure out what is absolutely necessary first and foremost.
Yeah.
And, probably 75% of the things will go away. I mean, in a way,
Yeah.
And that's not to say they'll go away completely to the point that we don't want to invest in them or whatever, but they're just not going to get the level of attention.
Yeah.
To the detriment of things like infrastructure that we're in sore need of in so many ways.
Well, as I say, if this is a moment where people come together, hopefully at least something might come out of it that's good.
Yeah. If
people look at this and they're just like business as usual, I mean, it just spells disaster in the future.
I know. Yeah. Well, that wasn't the happiest of talks, but it's not a happy time.
It is on a day like today when all this stuff is going on, and we all know people that are affected by it. I mean, there's no
sugarcoating it. It's just so horrendous, and we'll see. Hopefully, things become a little bit clearer here in the next couple of weeks, where people can start focusing on how to prevent this kind of stuff from happening. But we'll see.
As I say, fingers crossed. Hopefully this is a moment that gives people clarity and, we move forward.
Yeah. All right. We'll end it there, and we'll check on you later.
Yeah. Sounds good. See you in a week.
Bye.